There's nothing new under the sun. We actually have to be careful with that verse because it's talking about a calculating fellow. If you look at the verse 6, 7, and 8 of Ecclesiastes there. There's new ways of doing stuff. So it's not that there's no more knowledge. It's not that there's, the internet. It was new, right? But what is the internet? But a collection of things that were already around, but we've now got them at our fingertips. What's that? Yes. Come back to that question in a minute. Genesis chapter 2, the end of Genesis chapter 2, basically says the man and the woman were naked and they were not ashamed. We're going to talk about shame. Because in chapter 2, at the end of chapter 2, as some man has divided chapters, they were both naked and were not ashamed. But then, when you get to chapter 3, verse 7, which is not far away from the end of chapter 2, they were ashamed, right? The eyes in verse 7 of both of them were opened, and they knew that they were naked. They sewed fig leaves and made themselves coverings. Why? It doesn't say they were ashamed there, but why did they make coverings? Because they were ashamed. Verse 10, I heard your voice, Adam talking to God in the garden. I was afraid because I was naked. And then God says back to him, who told you you were naked? How do you even know what that means? A few verses ago, you were okay with it, right? Just a few verses ago, you were fine with this, and now you're not. What has happened? Sin. Y'all can be loud. Sin, right? So, sin brings multiple things, but shame and guilt, right, are, what do we think of when we hear the word shame? What do we think about? What pops in our minds? What's that? Unworthy. Okay. Guilt. Okay. What else? Okay. Embarrassment. Do we have a good image of the word shame or a bad image of the word shame? Bad. But this next 4 weeks, we're going to talk about the fact that it's a good thing. I contend shame is a good thing. We'll explore that in a minute. I contend this world, in general, has lost its shame. And that's a problem. It needs to find it. Now, we say there's nothing new under the sun. So, has the world really lost its shame in 2022? Or did it lose it in 1992 or 1972? or 1882? It started with Adam. So is it a downward spiral? Can it be stopped, altered, reversed? That sounds hard. We just need to change the world's view on sin. But what does it say about the apostles in Acts? Those men who have upset the world have come here also. Upset the world. They've come here also. It's a big task. So we think about the good old days, right? I don't know if there were any good old days as this goes. There's a country song that says, I miss Mayberry, right? But I don't know. I think it was Billy Joel who says, the good old days weren't always good, and tomorrow ain't as bad as it seems. Well, we don't all have social media. Hey, it is in our faces much more, right? Because of technology, but that's also a choice we're making. I would, and I love TV, man. Well, I like to watch sports. Much more of it is getting hard to watch, right? Commercials are agenda-driven. Everything on TV, it seems, other than maybe sports, though they try and weave it in there. Everything's got an agenda, it seems. Nothing is just what it is. Like we talked about Mayberry. If you watched Andy Griffith, I think it just was what it was. Or Leave It to Beaver, Dennis the Menace. It didn't, maybe I'm naive, but it didn't seem like Dennis the Menace. Anybody ever, some of y'all are like, what? Maybe? Everybody knows what Dennis the Menace is, I guess. Okay. It didn't seem like Dennis the Menace had an agenda. But I watch cartoons now. Oh. There's this Bluey. There's this Bluey character. We had to quit watching it. Why? Because Bluey keeps talking back and Bluey keeps whining. And I don't want my boys talking back and whining. So we quit watching Bluey. There's this Coco Melon. I don't know much about it, but do some research on the sensory overload that they've put into that thing. They want your brain firing on 600 kilowatt hours per second, and your brain's not ready to do that, especially when you're that high. And what does that do? Because they've got all these smart people behind this stuff, right? It's not just, can we make a good show? It's, can we make a good show that's going to make them keep watching this show, watching this channel, and buying this stuff? They're smart, right? They're smart. And that you want to think the best of things, but boy, we better be careful doing that. Because it seems it can't just be what it is anymore, that there's an agenda. And you look at commercials are getting real bad about this. That not only are they going to tell you about this medicine and the 900 side effects, and the one good thing it might do other than cause you to die, But they're also going to put some social spin on it. Watch the commercials now. Or don't, actually. Ephesians chapter 5. Let's go there. Oh, the toilet paper commercials? I don't know. Again, but they've got messages in all these things that we need to watch out for. Ephesians 5, for some reason I stopped in 1 Timothy. Really, verse 8 through verse 21. I don't know that we'll read that much, but let's start in verse 8. You were once darkness, but now you're light. You are light in the Lord. Walk as children of light, for the fruit of the Spirit is in all goodness, righteousness, and truth, finding out what is acceptable to the Lord. Have no fellowship with the unfruitful works of darkness, but rather expose them, for it is shameful even to speak of those things which are being done by them in secret. I would encourage you to read this whole chapter several times, but we'll stop right there for now. It's shameful to even speak about these things. In a world that's lost its shame, Paul says we shouldn't even be speaking about the things that are going on, and yet our world seems to not only speak about them, but promote and celebrate. That's just the world we're living in, and if we don't think it's true, I've got a short list. We could do a long list. I don't want to speak about all these things. I don't like speaking about all these things, but I've got a short list. So, good old days, things we maybe didn't talk about, now that are celebrated. One just popped in my mind that at one point, if a young lady out of wedlock got pregnant, it didn't get talked about much, right? Now, what happens? Now you can make $1 million on MTV. That one jumped out because, and they can say, well, they deal with some tough things on the show, and they do, but they also make these young ladies lots of money, and if they were to have another child, they can make some more money. It's in the best interest of the company putting on the TV show, I can tell you that. Well, of course. There's a swimmer in the Ivy League that was a man, is now trying to be a woman and is winning all these swim meets. Well, duh. And look, as a father of 3 girls, I can't figure out how people are not outraged that we're taking a spot away from a young lady who's really a young lady. It goes against everything Title IX. If you're into sports, you know what that phrase entails. It goes against everything they worked for since the 60s for women's athletics to let this happen. There's a bill in Florida. They called it the Don't Say Gay bill. I'm not trying to, we could get very political on this, and we're not going to. I don't want anybody, the bill says it's for K through 3rd. I don't even know if it's K through 5th. I don't want anybody talking to my K through 3rd or 5th grader about their sexuality except me. I don't care if you sit on this side of the aisle or this side of the aisle. I don't want you talking to my K through 5th grader about it, about what your views are of sexuality. It's not the place for it. And teacher, you're not the person for it. Whether you're a good teacher or not a good teacher, it's not the place for it. But everybody's up in arms that this bill is, I guess it's passed, I'm not sure, but everybody's up in arms that they passed this bill. And I'm saying, I don't want anybody talking to my kid about it. My job. And I better do my job, by the way. I need to do my job. Who knows what's going on with Disney right now? I mean, you better look into this stuff before you go spending your money. If you think Disney is the Mickey Mouse show still, well, you are not in this world, okay? You are not following. They're not, and they're. Right, right. There's an agenda, a corporate agenda that is being promoted. Again, everything isn't what it seems to be, right? It just isn't a movie to be a good movie. It's a movie I don't even think they care about making good movies. They want to make money and push an agenda. And believe me, they think pushing the agenda makes money, right? Or they would have a different agenda to push, because I think they're after the money, not the entertainment. Again, we could go on and on. I want to talk about quickly a couple things our kids are having to face, which we wish they weren't, but they are. So we better know, and we better pay some attention. I've just got a few on here. They're babysitters. I don't mean who you're paying to come in and watch your kid. I mean the fact that we're putting them in front of the computer and the TV and the iPad. And yes, there's great stuff on YouTube. And yes, within 3 or 4 clicks, you can find something that ain't great. And if we've left them alone to let them click around, kids are inquisitive. They're going to click around and find something you don't want them to find. But we keep doing it. We give the internet everything in the world you could ever want to know, and more than that, things you never wish you knew. And we put it right in the hands of these kids, and they're in the 3rd grade, in the 4th grade, in the 5th grade. Oh. Yes, Allie was the last one in her class at school. There was her, and the football coach's son. They were the last 2 to get phones in their grade. Ava has one, Autumn does not. Eventually she will. Middle school's not the time for it. Oh, but they're so handy, because I need to know, when I'm staying late, Mom and Dad, then I can text you and you can know when to come get me. How many of y'all stayed late after school? And how many of you texted your parents when it was time to come get you? I didn't. I either sat on the curb and waited or walked home, right? Right. But we've given them any kind of access to anything. Oh, we've put blocks on it. I don't know anything about these blocks, and I can tell you, they know more than we do about it. There you go. Outgoing calls only to one number. but it's something we've got to be aware of. And again, well, social media, right? I don't think social media is great for adults, but I can guarantee you it ain't good for kids. But there's middle school kids on it, certainly high school kids and on up. For what? For what? Why, as parents, have we said, yeah, that's okay? I don't know. I don't know. Hey, clothing. This is a battle, especially for girls, because when you talk about the world losing its shame, the stuff these mamas let their girls walk out of the house in as high schoolers, middle schoolers, it's exactly because that's what mamas are wearing. But it ain't what we need to be wearing. It ain't what you need to be showing to middle school and high school boys. It ain't what, it just ain't. It's short shorts, it's the tights. Well, not different kinds. Different kinds. Yes. But, you know, I don't, again, it's shame because these kids, they don't feel like there's anything wrong with it. Now, what do we know about teenage girls? They struggle with self-image and they struggle with being accepted. And then we're putting them out there in as little as they want to wear and wonder why they struggle with self-image. But if they're not wearing it, their friends talk. Whoa. It's just, well, if I'm buying the clothes, well, you don't, I ain't buying it for you. You can count on that. So I don't know where you're going to get it. But not all parents work like that. I get it. Yeah. 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 There is a culture war going on. We are in a battle. We better, that was a very short list. We are in a battle. We better know that. Our kids are being bombarded with it. We better know that. What I want to do over the next few weeks is talk about, okay, what do we do with this shame? Individually, collectively as a body, and then how do we help our kids deal with it? How do we help our kids deal with this lack of shame in the world? So that's kind of our game plan for the next few weeks. Nothing new under the sun. Again, there are new things, there's new ideas, but man is the same, right? There's nothing new about man and his makeup. Sin is the same. What it causes, what it does has not changed since the garden. And our spiritual need post Genesis 3 is the same today as it always has been. There's nothing new about that, right? And I think that's what that verse is kind of hitting on, that what we are and what we need hasn't changed and will not change, right? We all have a sin problem. We all need a solution. I contend again, that the world has lost its shame, but that shame is needed. Because shame means our conscience is working. So let's talk about our conscience for a little bit. Can we trust our conscience? How good is our conscience? Let's go to 2 Corinthians chapter 4. Let's start with here. Somebody want to read verses 1 and 2? 2 Corinthians chapter 4. Okay. So this is Paul talking. He says, we need to renounce these shameful things. And we have, and we delivered you a message for your conscience. 1 Timothy chapter 1. 1 Timothy chapter 1. If somebody would read 5, 6, and 7. 1 Timothy 1, 5, 6, and 7, please.
Now the purpose of this commandment is to love from a pure heart, from a good conscience.
Yeah.
From a good conscience, and from sincere faith, from which some having strayed have turned aside to idle talk, desiring to be teachers of the law, understanding neither what they say nor the things which they affirm.
So, what we're looking for is love from a pure heart, a good conscience, and a sincere faith. That's what we're looking for. What's a good conscience? One that's been properly taught and trained. Right from wrong. Who's doing the training? Bluey? Right? It should be the Word. It should be the Word. And maybe we'll spend our fourth week together talking about some ways to help train our conscience. It should be by the Word. Now, we can say that, but do we all live it? Right? You've talked to people, religious people, good people, who, well, that's the way I've always done it. That's the way I've been taught. It's not enough to say mom and dad need to be doing it. Mom and dad got to be doing it right. If mom and dad aren't using this, the kid's in some hurt. If Bible class teachers aren't doing this, if preachers aren't using this, I'm thankful we don't have that here. I'm thankful we are in this book, but not everybody's that way. That's what it should be. Romans chapter 2, and we've been studying Romans in the adult class on Wednesdays. Verse 14 and 15. When the Gentiles who did not have the law, by nature did the things in the law, although they didn't have the law or a law to themselves. Paul gets kind of hard to understand sometimes, but they didn't have the law, but they did the things that were in the law. How'd they know that? Verse 15, who show they were a law unto themselves at the end of verse 14. Verse 15, who show the work of the law written in their hearts, their conscience bearing witness. Their conscience bearing witness that, hey, this feels right. This makes sense to my brain and my training, whatever that is. Even if, again, I didn't have a law, I've got something inside me that says, that seems right, that doesn't, right? So that's what he's talking about here in Romans. Now there's a bad side. There's a bad side to it, which is why we've got to train it right. 1 Timothy, we were in chapter 1 earlier, but if you flip over to chapter 4, First Timothy chapter 4, starting in verse 1, the Spirit expressly says that in latter times some will depart from the faith, giving heed to deceiving spirits and doctrines of demons, speaking lies and hypocrisy. This sounds terrible, doesn't it? Having their own conscience seared with a hot iron, forbidding to marry and commanding to abstain from foods which God created to be received with thanksgiving by those who believe in the truth. Having their conscience seared with a hot iron, meaning what? What's that involve? What does that mean? What does that look like? But what is this searing your heart? What's that analogy? What's he trying to bring out, Doug? Anybody have a burn? I ain't never letting them cut on me again. I'll tell you that. They cut on me, and, oh yeah, it's no big deal. Yeah, right. Well, I can't feel anything right there. I mean, why? I don't know. Oh, it's surgical numbness. Why can't I feel anything right there? That's how this seared with a hot iron analogy is, right? That it's not feeling anymore. You've hardened it, hardened your heart. We have to be super careful that we don't let our hearts get hardened, that we don't let our conscience get seared with a hot iron. And here's a lot of times how it happens. It's not that we see the devil with his poker. It's just that creep, right? Creep, 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 slow. And before we know it, we're not pumping anymore. It's gotten hard. Do me a favor, please. For next week, I'll try and write them up here. Whoops, turned too far. Psalms 25, that does not look like a P at all. Ephesians 5 again, Philippians chapter 3, and Joel chapter 2. Take a look at those chapters. Read through those. Think about this stuff this week, and we'll pick up there some more next week. Thanks for your thoughts. Thanks for your time this morning. This says, I know, I don't write that well. Joel chapter 2, Philippians 3, Ephesians 5, and Psalms 25.